everyone, welcome to another Broken Meeple review on this somewhat wet UK rainy day, and have I got the hotness for you? Destinies. This has been talked about constantly lately. If you're a gamer and you haven't heard of this by now, then what cave have you been living under? Seriously, it is number one on Boardgamegeek for the hotness rating right now, and board game creators have been putting out reviews, putting out 9s and 10s and 5s out of 5s and all sorts. This is getting so much praise, it's unreal. Now, of course, the question I have to ask then is it all just hype, or is there actually some truth behind all this praise? Well, let's go into some detail and find out more. Destinies offers a fully story-driven, app-supported, RPG-like board game experience without the need for a game master. Each scenario depicts part of a vivid world, full of dark stories, epic NPCs, and mysteries to solve. Each player takes the role of a hero on a quest to fulfill their own destiny. Each destiny is the final goal of a character, and each has at least 2 completely different paths to victory, composed of a branching series of quests. Players compete with each other to push the world towards their own destiny. Much like Lucky Duck Games' previous fare, Chronicles of Crime, the game uses an app and scan-and-play technology with QR codes to offer players a unique story-driven experience full of dynamic events, epic adventures, and an ever-changing game world. At every turn, players discover new parts of the world presented on tiles, explore them, and pick one point of interest to visit. There, they learn more about the story and make crucial choices about how they want to interact with people, creatures, or situations faced. The consequences of each choice are meaningful and often change the state of the world forever. By exploring the map and visiting the various points of interest, players will gain experience which they can use to level up their free skill tracks. These skill tracks determine how easy or hard it is to gain successes for various tests such as dexterity or strength. Players will acquire item cards which can be sometimes discarded for a special bonus, used for a constant effect or ability, or used in conjunction with some of the interactions via the app by scanning the QR codes. Players will progress through the story at their own pace before attempting their finale, which consists of several interactions and skill checks woven together. The first player to complete their finale and fulfill their destiny is, of course, the winner.
Of course!
The box duration says 2 to 2.5 hours to complete the game of Destinies, that is, each scenario of Destinies. Now, that 2 to 2.5 hours time limit is true in more ways than one. When it comes to multiplayer, in 2 or 3 player, you are looking at about 2 to 2.5 hours to finish a particular scenario. This seems quite long though, especially when you consider that the stories, even though they are, they're stories, they're general fantasy stories, they're not the most, shall we say, in-depth stories ever, and you've taken it in turns to basically take the app, do your bits and bobs with it, and then pass it on to the next player. Once it's not your turn, there's pretty much nothing for you to do except for listening to the story of what the other players are doing. So 2 to 2.5 hours seems a long time to go through this. Bearing in mind, that sort of length of time is about as long as it should take a 2 to 3 player group to finish a game of detective. In fact, Chronicles of Crime that I mentioned earlier, their previous fare from Lucky Duck, you can get a scenario done in less than 2 hours easily, and I would argue the stories in there are a lot more detailed and intricate than what is going on here. If you play solo mode though, that 2 to 2.5 hours is actually how long it takes to complete the whole campaign.
What?
Wow, I mean seriously. We'll get onto the solo mode in more detail later, but 2 to 2.5 hours. That's as long as it took me to complete the entire campaign in solo mode. I'm not joking, each scenario took me about 30 minutes. Way too short for an immersive story-driven experience. And you know how I was able to do that? Because one, I'm a little bit of a speed reader, that kind of helps. But secondly, when you're playing by yourself, you literally, your turns are pretty much just go, I'll go to that tile, boop, choices, boop, 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 roll a couple of dice, boop, 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 and turn end. You know, there's your turn. Like, really quickly. Now, you might think, well, hang on a minute, what about all the map stuff and everything? You don't need it. No, you really don't. In solo mode, everything is handled on that app, and we'll get into more detail with that later, but with the app in solo mode, you don't need half the pieces in the box. You don't need the minis, you don't need the map tiles. All you really need is what goes on your player board, so your skill markers, the dice, and the item cards. And when you don't have to spend time going through that deck of tiles, going, alright, location 44, location 46, etc., you'd be surprised how quickly you can get through a map. And you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, what about the frame of reference of the map? It's all on the screen. The only thing that isn't there is where your personal player piece is. And if you can't remember the location placement of one mini, this is the least of your concerns.
Hello? Hello, anybody home?
In terms of ease of play, this rulebook is A+ grade material. Seriously. This rulebook is easy to read, it's got large font, lots of pictorial representation, an icon reference on the back. There's no way you can get a rule wrong with this. There's nothing that complex in this game really to begin with, and in combination with an app that is definitely a step up from Chronicles of Crime, honestly, this is the easiest story-driven game I have ever gotten into. The fact that there's even a watch it played video for this, which ultimately seems kind of pointless. No offense to Rodney, but seriously, you should have just put your feet up and taken the day off and, like, you know, taken some hard-earned rest, because frankly, I don't see how it's physically possible for you to get a rule wrong with this book and the app. You can literally be up and running with your first scenario in the first 5 minutes of reading this. It doesn't take long to skim through it, and even then, the setup pages takes you into the app and into the scenario, so you can pretty much just play the game and learn it as you go. It is that simple. Definitely not going to flummox anybody, even new gamers, to this kind of style of game, story-driven mode. And this high praise continues with the app itself. It is a step up from Chronicles of Crime. It's, I mean, Chronicles of Crime already had a fantastic app. This one's even better. It handles all the operational aspects of the map reveals, the points of interest, the various choices you can make in each scenario, like in the interactions themselves, as well as skill test results. It does everything you need it to, except for tracking where your miniature piece is, which is kind of odd, but, you know, as I said, in solo mode you don't need to care, and honestly, in multiplayer you don't overly need to care. I mean, you can pretty much just pass the tablet around and just remember where you were last, and you're pretty good, really. The map tiles almost seem a little bit redundant, but if you want that visual reference, it is there. In terms of, like, some nitpicks I have with it, though, there's not really a lot to nitpick this app on, except, seriously, Lucky Duck, would it kill you to put a back button on your app? Yes, okay, you might get the odd player who's going to cheat by choosing a thing on the app and then thinking, that wasn't particularly good, I'll go back and choose the other one. Whatever, let them cheat, let them play the game however they like. But for those of us who accidentally press something when they weren't meant to do that, and they have no way to undo the action, it was a pain in Chronicles of Crime. In this, it's not as bad, but still, it's something that would be nice. You know, a back button can't be hard to program, guys.
Am I doing this right? Should I update my software?
Honestly, for ease of play, great rulebook, great app, top marks. So a little hit and miss on the duration, but such good praise for the ease of play. So we're going to continue on that front, right?
Oh, my dear doctor, you have been naive.
Yeah, things are a little bit on the downward spiral when it comes to the tactics and strategy. Not all bad, but, well, let me tell you more. Firstly, the solo mode. There's 2 ways to play it, Explorer and Challenger. One is meant to be kind of like the free-for-all mode. Think, the adventure mode in Journeys in Middle-earth is a bit like that. But the Challenger mode is the time-pressured version, where it only gives you so many rounds to complete the scenario, fulfill your destiny. Occasionally it might extend your timer, but you have to know exactly how it will do that. It's not like you're given a clue as to how that's going to happen. But for the most part, it's very time-pressured. I'm just going to say it right now, do not play Challenger mode, it's
John Spartan, you are fined 1 credit for a violation of the verbal morality statute.
I'm sorry, it just is. If you play Challenger mode, the time pressure is so ridiculous that when you are playing the game, if you do not go to the specific locations you need to go to and pass all the skill checks that you're meant to at least the first time, if not maybe the second time on some of those checks, you will not succeed the scenario with the limited time you're given. The standalone scenario that you do for the training mission gives you 8 rounds. 8. That's it. You have a map tile segment, like a whole map world, that consists of a good 10, 11 tiles, I think, or something like that, 12 max, with 1, maybe 2 interactions on each, usually 2, occasionally 3, and dynamic events happening as well. There is no way you can do everything in those 8 rounds. You have to know exactly where to go. You've got to be like Sherlock Holmes from Consulting Detective. So what happens is that you play the mode, and you go through it, and you fail. And then you play again, and then you, well, I know what to do there, so I'll avoid that bit, I'll go to this bit, right, cool, and then I'll go to, oh, no, I fail. And then third time, it's like, well, I'll go to that bit and see whether, oh, no, well, I fail. Does this ring any bells to you? Yeah, it's time stories. It's the same problem that time stories had for people. The multiple runs where you fail and then you go back to the start and you rinse repeat. That's what challenger mode is. You play it, you fail, and then you, if via time stories logic, go to the places that you couldn't do before. It's almost as if this was like a direct module that could be plugged into time stories. It almost could be, to be frank. The challenger mode is not worth your time. Trust me on this. So okay, explorer mode should be a lot better then. Well, again, yes and no. Yes, you have all the time in the world to do what you want to do. Go around the map, explore this, have a drink in the tavern, go talk to this old guy, maybe, you know, play some dice with some gypsies and that down the bottom of the city, whatever you want to do. You can basically go through the adventure at your own pace, and events will still happen based on what scenario you're doing. However, the problem now is that you have removed all the challenge. In challenger mode, you have too much challenge, to like frustrating amount of challenge, whereas in explorer mode, you have zero challenge, like no challenge whatsoever. Because as far as I can tell, even when I was just dilly-dallying a lot of the time, there's no way to fail the quest, or at least you've got to be. If there is a way to fail the quest, I didn't see it. You know, I haven't gone through the app and purposely just tapped end turn 50 times to find out, but there were scenarios where I was really just running around in circles and still didn't fail. When you get to the finale, it just basically is a case of how long it takes you to get through the said finale, as opposed to, oh well, the finale didn't happen, you lose the game. So, and even then, by the time you get to the finale, you're powerful enough to take on Superman, so what difference does it make? It's not like you are going to fail. So with Explorer mode, it's basically just go through the story and just see what happens. So okay, multiplayer is the savior of this game, right? Not exactly. The problem is, yes, it solves some issues with the solo mode. You spend more time playing the game, you've got people around you, you get to see more of the stories pan out at once. The problem is multiplayer mode brings in its own share of issues. Firstly, do not go into Destinies as a gamer, or thinking that this is a gamer's game. If you're a Euro gamer, you're not going to enjoy this. Flat out, you won't enjoy this. Even I had slightly wrong expectations when I first came into this, and I had to kind of change my tone a little bit as I played it more to realise, yeah, this is much more a family game. This is something that I would expect parents to get their young children into for a light, story-based game. You might as well call it Destiny's quote-unquote my first story game. Like my first Scythe, my first Ticket to Ride, that kind of thing. This is basically my first story game. And the reason for that is A, it's super light. I mean, it's 2.0 on Boardgamegeek. I mean, I don't trust that rating that much, but come on, even 2.0 is quite generous for this. This is a very light game. But also, the game is essentially a big luck fest. And that's another problem. You don't really feel like you have a lot of control over what happens to you overall. You've got a different path to victory. Okay, great. But with the 3 characters that you have for each particular scenario, there's essentially 2 paths per character, but they overlap. So you might gel with someone else, or you might have completely different ones, whatever. But it's entirely luck of the draw, or luck of the path you take, as to whether you get to yours first before another opponent does, because you're racing each other to the finale. But let's say I got to go find 2 ritual items. I go over to the marketplace. There's no ritual items here. Oh, great. Well, where do I go now? Whereas your opponent had to go kill 3 monsters or something. Goes to this random village hut. Oh my god, monster! Kills it. And they're already in the lead because they just happen to go the right way. And the interactions are pretty basic. I mean, you go to a hut and it may give you 1 choice. It might give you 4 or 5 choices, but your turn doesn't end until you leave. So you might as well do everything there, which kind of is a bit weird. But, you know, you basically just decide which skill check am I going to roll and go with it. Now, before we get into the second half of this review, please consider leaving a thumbs up on the video. It means the world to me to know you appreciate the content. Also, don't forget that this channel is sponsored by Zatu.co.uk. In the description, you will find a code for 5% discount off anything you purchase off their website. If you like the sound of this game or anything else I've reviewed on the channel, and you want to save yourself a bit of money while purchasing some great games, consider visiting Zatu.co.uk and making a purchase today. Now, on to the rest of this review. So in terms of the aesthetics, come on, can this bring the game up a notch? Yes, to a point. overproduction is a word I would use. A lot of the components in this are really, really good though. The tiles are cool, well, they're basically thick card, but they're still good matte tiles. The dice are fantastic. These are some really nice looking chunky dice with custom facings on them. Really, really good. They're a joy to roll. There's very thick tokens for money and experience points and the points of interest and the slightly redundant trade token tiles that barely get used, but as I say, very good thick tokens. I mean, honestly, for those in the Kickstarter who got the metal coins, it almost seems kind of pointless really, because I think the coins are already good enough without getting the metal stuff. And you really didn't need the play mat, because frankly you're laying a few tile cards down, and in solo mode you don't even need the tile cards, so the mat is incredibly redundant at that point. And then you've got the miniatures, which really, what was the point? The miniatures are a complete waste of space. You know, there are a couple of good ones in there. There's one pretty big miniature that's really cool, and a few normal size ones, but the rest of them are so tiny, so really tiny, it's ridiculous. I've never seen miniatures this small since Warhammer Epic. Remember that game, Warhammer 40k Epic, where you did these massive grand scale battles and the miniatures are like this tiny? It's like that in this game. And they're supposed to represent, like, you know, some NPCs and your player characters. But a lot of the time, because you can't tell which mini's what at a distance, you end up moving other players' meeples quite a lot. Or you just can't tell which one is supposed to be yours in the first place. I actually don't know which mini is supposed to be the huntsman.
Dog, pig, dog, pig, dog, pig, pig, loaf of bread.
So I just picked any old generic meeple and just ran with it. It's that hard to make them out. You're probably going to want to sticker them or paint the bases to distinguish them, but then honestly, I would have been perfectly handy if this just had standees. It's not that the minis are bad quality apart from the diminutive size, it's just, why do we need them? For solo players, you don't even need the tiles with the minis. It's completely pointless. But even in a multiplayer game, would standees have been too much? Standees would have been fine, they would have looked good, you could have had good artwork on them. Hell, I would have taken tokens, circular tokens on the tiles, for as much as it really matters. But, of course, Kickstarter plus minis equals profit! That's exactly what happens. Whenever a Kickstarter happens, you gotta put minis in it, otherwise it will never get money. That's unfortunately the sad rule of Kickstarter these days. But, you know, the minis, they're in there, but this is why you've got a box that big. You know, you really could have had this in a much smaller box if you just had player boards, item cards, and a bunch of tokens. But the minis take up a good third of the space in the box, and they're just really not that needed. Okay, Destinies, you gotta fight a little bit harder here. Come on, what about Immersion? This is a story-based RPG style game, so naturally this is going to be rated very heavily on immersion factor. Is it great? It's good. It's good. It's good, but not great. The stories are fine, but they are your everyday run-of-the-mill fantasy trope stories. There's nothing in these stories that I would consider to be unique, particularly innovative, or really top-notch writing, to be honest. It's fine, they're passable. They will keep you entertained for the one time you'll need to play this, you know, more on that later, but yeah, the stories are not going to suddenly give you a lot to remember after you're done playing the game. I've already forgotten the plot of a couple of the scenarios already after playing them a couple of times. They're just not that memorable. I think Chronicles of Crime did a lot better, and I know I keep bringing that up, but come on, this is the direct comparison. You know people are going to ask this question. But the stories in Chronicles I thought were more detailed, they were more intricate, they threw you for a loop at times, you know, they threw in good plot twists. Here, there's not really many plot twists, it's just very bare bones. Now granted, as I said, this game is probably best geared towards families and young children. They keep me entertained for the 30 minutes it took me to get through them, but then I don't really remember them much afterwards. But that being said, the theme is still strong here, you know, with the item cards, with the app itself providing some good ambient noise in the background as you go into each point of interest. You know, it does immerse you into that world. Granted, I wish there was some more voice acting in this app, because literally the only voice acting you get is in the intro. That's it. Seriously, I would have liked to have had voice acting for the actual interactions you came across with NPCs. That would have been so much better. But also, some music would have been quite nice as well. Yes, you've got the ambient noise, but the only music track on the entire app is this one track that's annoying. It loops during the menu screen, and it's a bizarre choice of track. It starts off really soft, do-do-do-do-do, and then suddenly blows out your eardrums with this massive epic like crescendo at the end for no reason, whilst you're still basically deciding whether to press the start button or not. It's a really bizarre musical track, and it's the only one there. I would have liked to have seen a bit more done in this to up the immersion factor, but I get that that would cost a lot of money and be quite tricky to do, so maybe my expectations were a little bit too high on that. But as I say, the immersion is good, the theme is strong, but don't go into this thinking it's going to have this really complex, intricate story with a campaign that links back to other things that you do. And honestly, the phrase it uses, what's the phrase on the box? It mentions about a dynamic changing world or something. I've got to read this. The consequences of each choice are meaningful and often change the state of the world forever. You what? You might make a choice that will have like a tiny impact on the current scenario you're playing, and even then it's not the biggest change ever, or not something that drastic. But no, don't go into this thinking that the actions you do in campaign 1 are going to drastically affect like campaign 4 or whatever. You could honestly play most of this campaign in standalone mode and you'd be pretty much on par with what you were doing already. And finally, the replay factor. Does this game warrant the fact that you're going to play this multiple times? Sadly, this is a failure as well. There isn't enough reason for me to play through these modules again. Honestly, I was kind of done with these after one play, but 2 plays is the absolute max you're going to get with each scenario. And I mean the absolute max. Because the scenarios will play out the same way with the same dynamic events every time you play it. So that doesn't change. So the only thing that's different is which destiny you go for. But the problem is, there's not a huge amount of distinction between them, and some of them overlap. If I'm playing the witch, for example, I might have collect some ritual items or go kill something. Okay, fine. If I play the huntsman, I might have go kill something or go talk to people. Those 2 on the previous ones, the kill something, are the same goal, just on 2 different characters. So essentially you only really have 3 distinct paths that you can take with 3 different characters. But the paths themselves don't really lend to a greater deal of storytelling. It's just a case that you might go in a slightly different direction and encounter a few different interactions. But considering these interactions are very basic, it's not like when you play the mode a second time it's going to be wildly different and like give you a completely new branching storyline. No, it's the same storyline, just from a different perspective. This is 1 standalone scenario, 4 in a campaign. As I said, there's only so much linking them anyway, but we're talking 5 scenarios that in solo mode will take you less than 3 hours, less time than it takes to watch the Justice League Snyder Cut to finish. That's not a good time length for a game, to be perfectly honest. I mean, that's like exit level styles of, like time it takes to finish. Now, if you play multiplayer, you're probably looking at a good, say, 10 hours of time, 12 absolute max, which is not bad. But again, once you're done, it's kind of obsolete at this point. You can't even really play it multiplayer after playing it solo because you know where to find certain things. It gives you a massive advantage against the other players. If I've played through the standalone scenario once or twice with different characters, I cannot play the same scenario multiplayer with anyone, because I know exactly where to go. They'll be floundering all over the place trying to find their respective items or kills, and I can just basically go point A, point B, point C, and win. Completely ruining the experience. So, honestly, replay value is nowhere near as strong as it could have been. So in summary, Destinies should have blown my mind. Sadly, it feels like a bit of a disappointment and a step backwards from what we had before with Chronicles of Crime. Chronicles of Crime is the superior game easily. Much greater tension, co-op mode, a chance to actually lose the game as opposed to like get beat by an opponent being the only way to lose the scenario, and like decent stories, intricate plot twists, much more detailed, just much tighter, I think, that Chronicles of Crime was. But Destinies is by no means a bad game, but I think it's got a very specific target audience, and I don't think it was marketed to say that. The competitive nature I don't think works. I applaud Lucky Duck for trying something new. I'm all up for innovative ideas, and I was keen to see how this would work. I just don't think it does. This should have been a co-op mode. Don't have this racing each other to fulfill your destiny quicker. Just have a few different story branching paths and have people work as a 2 or 3 man team in order to complete the scenario. I just think that would have worked a lot better. But there are good things about this. The stories not great, but they're still decent enough, so there's a good amount of theme. There's certainly a very, decent amount of effort put into the production value of this. It looks good, it's got quality components, and the app is fantastic. It is the easiest story-driven game that I've ever played. I mean, you want to get families and young children into this, or non-gamers even, this is definitely one of the best ways to start them off into this genre. And if you're playing this solo, you will get through it pretty quickly, and it won't take up much of your time. It just should probably maybe take up a little bit more of your time in terms of a replay perspective. So there are some problems I have with the mechanics, but I don't think I'm the target audience for this. But I gotta speak my mind and speak honestly, this is a game I was really disappointed with, and I cannot understand where a lot of these other reviewers are giving it 9 out of 10 and 5 out of 5s. It's like, did we play the same game? I'm not entirely sure. Although, to be fair, a lot of them didn't play it solo, so maybe that's a factor. But I gotta be honest here. Although, as I said, different audience, families, this works. Just not for me. I think it's a bit of a disappointment, but overall I'm gonna say that this was more enjoyable for me and less frustrating for me than Efferfields was, the similar story-driven game that disappointed me. I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10. I can't give it a seal of endorsement, not for my current market, not for someone like me. I just don't think it measures up anywhere close to what other creators are giving it. But I think for families, you could find something good here. I didn't hate my time playing this game. I've played it, I'm done, I have no desire to play it again. But I think that families are going to have a good time with this, and I think there are people who are going to be big fans of this, and fair enough. I can see why. It's still a decent effort, and I would like to see Lucky Duck take this concept and run with it. Really fine-tune that app even more. I mean, it's already a great app, but go nuts with it. Take the co-op nature to the next level, and maybe if you want to do a competitive story game, just have a bit more work on it. You've made an effort here. I applaud you for it. Just didn't really work for me. So that's it for me on this video. If you liked what you see, please consider leaving a thumbs up and leave some comments in the video to discuss the game further. Did you like it? Did you not like it? I want to hear your thoughts as well. We all like different things, and it's cool to get into these discussions. If you want to check out more content on the channel, then in the last week I put together a top 10 list for most essential expansions. I also like to do collaborations with other small creators, and in the last week I teamed up with the Lighten Up initiative to also talk about 5 other disappointing games. Check out the content that's on the channel, and I'll be in touch soon. Take care, and remember, it's only a game. Bye for now.